My name is Gerard Robinson. I'm the Vice President for Education at the Advanced Studies and Culture Foundation in Charlottesville, Virginia. Recently, I had an opportunity to speak with several educators about the role of the teacher in student formation. And one of those educators is with me right now. And we're going to talk a little more about that topic, but also get to know more about our educators. So Joseph, welcome to In Character.
Well, thanks for having me on today. I really appreciate the opportunity to share.
Who is Joseph? What do you do? What keeps you excited about your field?
Oh, wow. Boy, that's a great question. I am the instructor of innovation and creativity at Effingham High School. I was the 2007 Illinois Teacher of the Year, recipient of the NEA National Award for Teaching Excellence in 2009. In 2016, I was recognized as one of the top 10 teachers in the world as part of the Global Teacher Prize. And so my, sphere of understanding and opportunity has grown exponentially over my last 31 years in the classroom.
So you know a few things about the teaching profession. You seem to like it.
You know what? I absolutely love it. When I got out of undergraduate school, I had plans to go back, and I really wanted to go to law school. I had a great teacher in high school that kind of was leading me down that road, and I picked up a degree in education. And I thought, you know what, I'll teach for a couple of years, pay a little bit of my tuition down, and then go back on the springboard of life and try to deepen my studies there. But once I got in the classroom, I saw a lot of need, and I grew up in poverty, and I saw a lot of students like me. I mean, you could kind of tell who they were, and they needed someone there. They needed an advocate for them. And the deeper I got into it, the more that I realized we need strong teachers that are listening to students and helping them dream big, and then helping them create scaffolding to make those dreams a reality.
What subject or subjects do you teach?
Well, I first started out with, I was teaching history, and I have degrees in history and English. And so I've taught in both fields, but around the late 90s, I started getting really involved with multimedia, and I had an opportunity to work in the film industry at the end of the school day and in the summers. And so I had this other teacher from our area, and we would travel all over the countryside making films. Our films aired on PBS, MLB Network, the documentary channel, Hulu. I had 100 million homes nationwide. They were highly recognized and critically acclaimed. And so my district's like, hey, would you like to come back and help our students learn how to tell stories? And that's kind of where the multimedia class started. And from there, it's grown into a full-blown innovation class. But our kids have been invited to speak at UNESCO, at the International Summit on Human Rights. They've had their film footage shown in every country on the earth on the same day as part of a big Hollywood film. And we really try to provide our students with an opportunity to be able to dream big and to make those dreams a reality on the global stage. So, one of the blessings that's come from Teacher of the Year, the Global Teacher Prize, is I've met this incredible network of people like you that I invite into my classroom. And whether it's virtually or face-to-face, my students get to work with leading animators from Hollywood, scientists, business leaders. And that's something special because I live in a great community, but we're also a little bit more of a rural community in central Illinois. And most of these kids would never have these opportunities. And then we also try to reach out to students in inner cities across the United States. We connect with schools around the world. We're currently working on a project in Malawi where we're helping replant 60 million trees with some schools over there. And so, I want my kids to do more than read about it in a book. I want them to experience it. And normally what you're hearing from me right now would not be the case in my classroom because it's my kids talking, not me. And so I want them to be leading the conversations with people like you. And my job is to step back and to facilitate that, to make sure they have everything that they need to do so.
And it was great, it's great for you to mention rural education. When we hear Illinois, we immediately think of Chicago, understandably so, maybe the state capital. But we forget that, many of the students in the United States are in very small school system. A number of them, in fact, are in rural areas. And what comes to mind for me is remembering talking to a leader who worked with 10 rural counties here in Virginia, and they applied for a grant for from the National Science Foundation. They used that to have their students start conversations with other children in Brazil, for example. They never could have traveled to Brazil, but through technology, they're making that happen. How big of a difference in what you're doing through technology really having on not only the students, but the rural community where you work?
Wow, well, that's a great question. So several years ago, I had a kid. As a matter of fact, I did a keynote on this yesterday with a school around the St. Louis area. And we were talking about, my students' understanding of bigger issues. Sometimes they just didn't have that, they didn't have skin in the game, or they didn't have that face-to-face piece with it. So social injustice, racial inequity, they just didn't get it. We did not have a very diverse community at that time. Our diversity has grown a lot over the last few years. And so I reached out to some friends of mine down around the Metro East area in St. Louis, and we started a project called the No Barriers Project. And my kids, they collected 50,000 articles of clothing, books. They took books down to young mothers in St. Louis. They connected them with literacy experts. And what happened out of that was our kids really started to see life outside of the lens that they had. Their peripheral grew. And from that, we were in the paper a lot, and I took the kids out to events in our community, and they spoke, and our community became engaged. And so they wanted to be involved in this. Now, fast forward a few years, in about 2007, I had a student come to me and said, Mr. Fatheree, I get this idea. I was meeting with a local business leader last night, and he talked about how to take an idea overseas, be able to develop it and mass produce the product, and then bring it back to the United States and sell it. And he goes, how come we don't learn anything like that here in school? And that's not a knock on our school.
Sure.
It's just the way the traditional curriculum was. And so I called that business leader up, and he goes, well, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I want to start an entrepreneurism class. And we went out in 2 days, raised $150,000 of startup capital. Okay. And that program has now grown to, I believe, over 250 schools across the United States. And it's all privately funded, and private schools and public schools come together. The kids meet in different businesses every day, and they work with business leaders, and they learn how to bring their business ideas to life. My innovation program is somewhat like that. So the reason I say it is because community leaders got to see what we were doing in the classroom, and they understood the impact the work we were having with students, how it was going to transform communities down the road. So our kids are out in the community all the time, but a lot of times I think educators are afraid to open their doors. They're afraid of judgment. They're afraid of a lot of different things. But I would really encourage you to invite as many community leaders, parents, experts in as you can, so that they bring value to your classroom, but you also create this conduit of communication. And if you don't think that it needs to happen, look at the conversations that take place in communities on Facebook where those relationships aren't built. And so I would rather go build those and help, destroy the mythology of what school isn't, and help create a joint new story about what school can be.
The residents of Illinois may never get a chance to meet you in person, and you were their state teacher of the year. Walk us through the process of someone saying, hey, we think you should apply, to you hearing your name called.
Wow. So it was quite a journey for me. I had matter of fact, my co-producer, he was also my co-teacher. We lost him this year, unfortunately, due to pancreatic cancer. But, he had received 12 Mid-America Emmy Awards for his film production. He was a Milken educator. He was a two-time finalist for Illinois Teacher of the Year. He was always encouraging me to step out of the box. So we went through the process, and then, to find out, I was at a homeless shelter down in the Metro East area working in the summer, and I got a phone call, and they said, well, you're a top 10 finalist for Illinois Teacher of the Year. I almost fell off the ladder. But I knew how many other great teachers are out there, and I don't know how I even fit in this box. And then that night we went to the banquet, and Craig was able to go with me. He ended up, before he passed away, also he was an Illinois was an Illinois State board member. So he had this great life of giving back. And that's what I learned from Craig so much. But we're at the banquet that night and we're on the stage and my name was called and I was just speechless. Because again, I thought these other 9 people are so much more qualified than myself. And matter of fact, my wife and I didn't even get a hotel room that night. We had to drive all the way back home. And my students had found out about it because there was something on the TV and they decorated my yard up and it was so nice to come home and see that. But I was up the next morning and driving back up. And it wasn't one of those things that you had to earn points to get into the organization. You were immediately invited into this organization of incredible teacher leaders. And it was a life-changing moment for me. And one of the pieces of work that I did that I'm really proud of is when I worked with the National Network of State Teachers of the Year, that they've also invited finalists in as part of the membership because all of them are outstanding teachers. And to be frank about it, we're just fortunate enough to represent hundreds of thousands or millions of teachers around the United States and around the world. It's a real privilege. There are a lot of great teachers out there that have done more life-changing work than I'll ever think of doing that unfortunately that will never be recognized. So I think about that person and try to advocate for him or her every time I take the stage or I'm in a conversation.
Well, based upon, of course, what our listenership will, and those who are going to watch, hear from you right now, coupled with what you said before, we're all pretty clear why you were definitely chosen as a Teacher of the Year. Okay. And I want to thank you particularly for focusing on students in rural areas for all the reasons that we discussed. Urban students, in fact, when I taught, it was in an urban environment. And I learned a ton more when I started to work with people in rural communities. And so thanks for being a champion for them. I want to thank you for joining. And like I said, this won't be our last conversation. I'm going to look a little more into your idea about working with students for startups, whether they're startup ideas, startup businesses, because in the environment we're in right now, millions of people filing for unemployment. In situations like this, people are often going to have to create their own, make their own way. And young people could possibly be the linchpin that we're looking for right now.
They are our future, and what we've got to do. I truly believe the cure for cancer is sitting in the mind of some little 5-year-old in a school that unfortunately may not be helping groom and allow that child to grow at the level that he or she needs to do so. And so programs like this create those opportunities. And, you know, I'm waiting for the next great idea to come out of one of these kids to cure COVID, you know, to solve global warming or a host of other issues. And I'm glad we can partner with great people like you to make those things happen.
Well, we're definitely, we'll continue to work together in partnership. Joseph, thank you so much for your time. And everyone, thank you for your support.
Thanks for having me on.
Take care.